Hello and welcome to Market Index. My name is Chris Conway. Today I am joined by Dr. Mike Jones, Managing Director of Impact Minerals. Impact recently released their scoping study for the Lake Hope High Purity Alumina project in Western Australia. Mike, thanks for agreeing to take part in a rapid fire with Market Index.
Not a problem, Chris, and great to be here.
Mike, before we get to the announcement, I just wanted to set the scene for the audience. What are some of the applications of high purity alumina?
So it's used in two main industries currently, and that's where the dominant volume is. And the first one is actually, it acts as the separator between the anode and the cathode in many battery architectures, in particular lithium-ion batteries. And for those of you who remember that a few years ago, the Samsung phones were exploding in people's pockets and all around the place. And that was because the separator wasn't doing its job. So alumina and high purity alumina is very thermally inert, and it's a very hard substance. And so it avoids the heat transfer within these batteries. So yeah, it's a very important part of that. And the second main use is actually in LEDs, in light globes that are being increasingly used around the globe, in particular with the removal of incandescent light globes, and which are obviously energy inefficient. And so there's even legislation, for example, in the US to ban incandescent light globes. And so there's an underpinning demand there in that particular space. It's also used in micro LEDs. So those of you watching Samsung OLEDs and LG, those are all done with HPA, and that's because it has incredible brightness, and so it's used as the backer on the conductors and transistors in that space. So yeah, two main uses and growing demand over the next decade.
Mike, just briefly, I'd like to thank you for the work you're doing because I had one of those Samsung exploding phones, so appreciate it. Let's turn to the announcement. What are the key details from the scoping study that you think investors really should pay attention to?
So a scoping study is an early phase look at the economic viability of a project and all the things that you need to consider. And when we first came across the project in March this year, that's when we announced the deal. And just to be clear, we've got the rights to earn 80% of that project by completing a pre-feasibility study, which is the next level down of understanding of the costs. So the scoping study has shown three major things. First of all, that the NPV, that's the net present value, the value of the project in the ground right now, is over $1 billion Australian dollars, 1.3 to be precise. And that gives investors a potential target market capitalization for impact as we move forward towards production. And given that we're about 35 at the moment, there's significant upside there. The second one is the capital expenditure. So that's quite an achievable target. It's currently looking at about 250 million Australian dollars. And that's on par with, a high quality, say 4 or 5 million ounce gold deposit, something like that. And those are, achievable targets. But the really big number, the third one and the most important one, is actually the operating cost. So we've demonstrated in the scoping study that we will potentially be the lowest cost producer of HPA globally. Now, that's actually quite a bold statement to make. And look, we've done a lot of research from both published and unpublished sources. And but not only will we be the cheapest, we could be potentially the cheapest by a significant margin of up to 50%. And in a place like the HPA market, it's important that you are one of the lowest cost producers. Otherwise, you won't make it through the market cycle. I've been around too long to know any different. And it really comes down to the cost of production. So this is really a breakthrough project on a global scale, and we believe it's going to attract a lot of attention. So exciting results all around.
Sounds like it, Mike. Fantastic. What's the outlook for HPA, and what are some of the key trends investors need to watch in this space?
Well, we discussed the two main uses, obviously in the battery space and in the LED space. So in the batteries, obviously, in particular, lithium-ion batteries, forecast to grow, almost exponentially this decade. And whether it actually ever comes to that, that growth rate remains to be seen, of course. But certainly with the uptake of EVs, around the world and the move towards, the energy transition, there's an underlying demand there in the battery space, but also in the LED space. As I mentioned previously, incandescent light globes are on the way out. They are energy inefficient. And there's legislation in the US already and around the world increasingly to basically mandate the use of LEDs. So that's a huge marketplace that we aim to tap into. So we're looking at a compound annual growth rate for those markets combined of about 20% per annum. So that's pretty significant. And there's a possible forecast supply deficit or shortage of some sort, within the next 3 years. So hopefully we'll be delivering into that market at that time.
Mike, when it comes to the project specifically, what are the next steps for de-risking of the project?
So we are currently undertaking the environmental baseline studies. So far, so good. There's been no significant issues raised there. We have already received heritage clearance, and that's a huge step forward. Working very closely with the Naju Native Titles Group, and who are based in Norseman here in Western Australia. They've done a number of agreements with mining companies over the years, and we'll look forward to negotiating a mining agreement with them. So we'll have the mining lease application lodged later this month, or certainly by the end of the year, and that'll set in train a 2-year process to getting that granted. And then in the first quarter of next year, we should have finished the first stage of metallurgical test work, which is part of the pre-feasibility study that I mentioned. And at that point, we should have quite a lot of material available then to give to our potential offtake users, end users, in both the LED and the battery space. So a lot of news to come from there. I've also been around a long time, and PFS test work's often not the sexiest thing to be putting out into the marketplace. So we've also got our Arkham battery metals project here in Western Australia. We've got some really significant anomalies for a wide range of metals, but nickel, copper, lithium, and rare earths in particular. And we'll be looking forward to some drill programs early in the new year on those as well. So it's going to be very rich in news flow over the next 6 to 9 months.
Mike, you just touched on some of the catalysts. Can you shed some more light on the timeline of some of those milestones? And, what does the future look like 3 years out for Impact from here?
Sure. Look, by the end of this quarter, as I mentioned, have the mining lease lodged and the start of some samples that we can put in for market testing with the end users. That's going to be a real focus for 2024. And in particular, the first quarter, we will have finished the optimization of the metallurgical process. It's 5 stages, and at that point, we'll be able to push through quite a lot of material. And the end product, in fact, there we go. I've actually got a sample of it here. So some of the HPA, the white powder in through there. And it's always interesting traveling around with that, let me tell you. Yeah. And so, and we'll be completing the pre-feasibility study by probably middle of next year, quarter 3, and that will trigger us earning our 80% interest in the project. And then we'll kick straight forward into the definitive feasibility study. So the aim is that we will get towards production, at least in the small scale, around about 2026. So you asked what's happening over the next 3 years. That's really the big driver for us. And, at about that point, there's supposed to be a bit of a shortage in the market. So hopefully our timing will be right, and we'll be delivering into an expanding market just at the right time. And I will say, if people want to see what can happen in this space, they should take a look at Alpha HPA Limited. Their ASX code is A4N. Their market cap is currently anywhere between 800 million and $1 billion. And they have got it right in the HPA space. And we aim to follow in their footsteps, over the next 3 years. And hopefully we'll get up to those same lofty heights at some point.
Mike, it sounds incredibly exciting. Congratulations on the announcement. Thanks for taking the time to have a chat with Market Index. We very much appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks very much. And people are always welcome to contact me directly here at Impact Minerals.